Hey everybody. So last time I had thought I'd completed the X animation of the cameras, um, but I hadn't. I actually had created, like, I had gotten it working, like it was working and demonstratable, but it had like a lot of issues. First and foremost, like none of the communication schemes that would go back and forth between the camera management screen and the actual and the animation was working and all that. But then as I started trying to build that stuff out, a lot of very interesting bugs started to present, and those bugs were awesome because like I'm very new to signals, and it sort of like kind of not leveled me up, but definitely gave me a little bit more experience with signals um, that I was really happy with. But so basically, what we're looking at here from the animation perspective is I have a camera, so and this is still kind of buggy. I'm in a sort of a buggy state that's animated, and then I have a floor that's not. Let me go to meshes. I have a floor that's not animated, and I have a light that is animated. So this is actually moving, but the camera is moving with it. That's why it doesn't appear to be moving. And then I have a block that's just sitting stable. So neither the floor nor the block are actually animated, but the camera and this light are animated, and there's actual light as well, which is animated. So when we go to animations and we look at the X, so I already know I have a problem, right? Because these numbers are not correct. Um, but and it doesn't say perspective camera there. Um, but you know, that's what that's how that's a very like whenever I see and experience things like this, it makes me happy because that's my opportunity to learn things. Um, if everything you code just kind of goes nice and smooth, you're not learning anything. You're not growing. So like growing comes with a thing called growing pains, but I think like these big bodybuilder people like actually probably after they go to a workout and they feel a specific kind of pain, they're like, that's a good pain. I'm happy to hear that. That's exactly what this is for me. Like, this is really exciting for me. But with that said, the exposition, um, it, basically this light mesh and the light itself are starting at 2 and -2 and ending at or starting at 2 and 2 and ending at -2 -2. Now I don't think this actually makes any difference, but if I change that, so let's just change it to 4. Yeah, see, it's not responding, um, and it's not reading or updating. So that's a bug that I need to figure out. But yeah, this is the way it goes. But so, anyways, as you can kind of get the idea that we have a camera panning, a light panning, and a light mesh panning. We have a stable floor that's just getting different lighting based on where the light is and all that. I wonder what happens if I pause it. That'll be very interesting to see. Okay, so yeah, so everything's working because the camera is in fact moving and staying in sync with this up here. But um, so now you could kind of like I guess if you like kind of back to that photography thing, you could actually use this to really have a good idea of if you're moving a light, how it's going to look as you move it, and where you might get your best shot. Um, as you can see, it's completely. Well, I guess it's off the screen there, but anyways, definitely not exactly working right. So, well, I guess it is kind of because the thing is, no, it's not because see, the camera's still looking here. It's supposed to be looking at 0 0 and 0 0s right there. So there's all kinds of stuff broken. But anyways, I did go through one round of bug fixes yesterday, and just general updates that I knew would happen. So one thing is, as I was making these changes, I wasn't calling this update camera. Let me get um, yeah. So right now I have an error. Basically, it can't read the item at 153. So it's getting into this update thing, and the pair doesn't exist. Oh, and I know exactly what that is, and I will mention that. Let me get rid of this breakpoint. Yeah, the pair doesn't exist at this point, and actually, and what's the reason is because of the way I implemented cameras. And the reason I implemented cameras in the way I did was because cameras are actually different, in that you I only have a concept of one camera, but that camera can be a very different thing called either a perspective or an orthographic camera. And what I do is every time I update the camera, I actually blow away the old camera and create a new camera. And I'll show you that here in a second. Where are we at? 354. So basically, I needed to add this value change thing, and I just got sort of zombied my way through copying and pasting and getting this update camera to work. And yeah, then all hell broke loose. So let me work. I didn't make any interface changes. So go to definition. So an update camera, I call this thing called setup camera, which is a problem, because in setup camera, um, and I actually put a comment here saying that this is bad. What I need to do is I shouldn't call setup camera, because basically all setup camera checks to see is what is the current type, and then it literally creates a brand new one. That's a mistake, and it's messing a lot of things up, because a new one gets a new ID. But that while that's my biggest actual personal mistake, it's not my biggest. It's not actually the biggest problem. It's just the tip of the iceberg. The biggest problem is that um, it has a big. This really has a strong likelihood of becoming a memory leak, and then when I'm trying to reread it on the animation side over here, it can't find it, which is why I'm getting that error saying that it can't find the item on undefined. Oh, I actually closed the whole. Let me open this up again. And oh my gosh, what did you do? Control Shift I. Console. Yeah. So it can't read this, because when it goes to get the pair over here from this ID, what happens is it can't find one. There is not one, because the ID is different. So like yesterday when I was playing around with it, the ID I was trying to get was 13, but when I created a brand new one here in setup, the new ID was 14. So I had, and that is the very definition, or one of the very definitions of a memory leak. I had a reference to an old one that only exists because I have a reference to it, and an actual new one that I'm actually using. So anyways, what I need to do is check to see if it changed, check to see if the type changed, and if the type changed, then I need to create a new one, but I shouldn't be calling setup. So that was the first big problem. Let me go to this, wrong one, in 3JS service and expand this out. So let me move this guy down to here. So that was the first change. This is where I changed. Oh, okay. So what I was originally doing, I had this reversed. I had removed this from here. I swapped out the order, and I started with an empty array, which was a problem, because then when I tried to run it in the component, I tried to do stuff, there was nothing there, and it was causing a bunch of breakages. Over here, I made changes so that instead of this perspective camera writing a perspective camera, it was actually it's writing a supported camera. So in all likelihood, so I've only done changes for perspective camera. In all likelihood, I can actually get rid of this and use supported camera. And that was what I was kind of talking about with the self-healing. Like, it looks like a lot of my double code may get to go away because of this change in the TypeScript, which is like a novel experience for me, because like this, generally what will happen is I'll create a top more all-encompassing type, and then sort of work my way back in some way. But this, I actually started with two types, and then ended up creating a greater type, a super type that contains both of them, and it kind of looks like uh, this whole issue that I've been sort of chirping about for the last uh, month um, may actually self-heal itself through here, and that'll be really interesting to see. I'm actually super excited to see how that plays out. Um, Obviously, something just an experience you wouldn't be able to have in a corporate environment because you really need to get shit done. In my playing around, having fun, learning a brand new TypeScript, brand new library, building crap out that the 13-year-old me really wants to build out. It's awesome. This uh, and it's fun and all that. And I obviously am just incredibly grateful that I have the opportunity to kind of step through this. But enough of that. So this was such a fascinating error. So when I had this error, um, I had it created a runtime error, and the runtime error, and I think I can just, so we don't really need what I had anymore. Let me do that. I think I can just do this and create the error. Yeah, it'll rebuild, and then I believe if I look in my console, yeah. See, this sent me for a real loop because, and I love this because this is kind of like I try to always read. Like some people, they see an error like this and they don't even read it. I try to read it because after you read it like 1,000 times, it'll start to make sense. So writing signal is not allowed in computed or an effect by default. Use allow signal rights. And I'm like, I don't know what this bullshit means. I just don't know. I have no idea what that means. So I was like, huh. But the thing is I call this setup camera inside of an effect in one of the components. I believe that's what this is telling me, is that it says it's not allowed in an effect, which to me, technically, from the perspective of the developer where I'm at, it's not an effect. It's like, this is a service. There's no effect here. But from the perspective of the people who are building Angular, it isn't an effect because I call this from an effect. And so literally what I did was I needed it because I needed to make this update because I call this update camera whenever I make changes, and I needed to publish the fact that it was changed. And then when I commented this out and I moved that code to here, set up camera, and then call the effect, and set up update camera doesn't get called from any effects anywhere, boom, the problem's gone. So that I consider a level up. I consider that I leveled up because now I realize when I'm thinking about calling things, I need to make sure that I don't call things in an effect that then tries to set the signal. So that was awesome. Awesome. So that's that. Let's see, what did I do in here? Okay, here I just call the update camera, which happens after only on a value change. So if I, in the future, if I ever had some effect and then I try to call update camera, I'm going to see that bug show up. So that, and there is actually a very strong possibility of that happening whenever I get to the chance where I can, which feels like it's so infinitely in the future, but a chance to work on import export, then I'll be able to, then I may have a very good chance that I'll be calling this in an effect. So there's that. That animation property. Okay, so here's when I realized, so I made that hack like 3 weeks ago, and I just knew it was going to come back and bite me in the buttocks, because basically all I check to see is if the animation pair is the same, the length is the same, and then I don't do an updates, because what was happening was, let's see, let me add a mesh, and then edit it, and let's move this guy back up here, and then it is a Sunday for me, so I tend to go long on these days. So come over here, and then I would try to change something in here, and I would be like, oh, I want to make this 1, 2, and I would lose focus, and it was because it was rebuilding the whole thing every time. So I came up with this cheap hack where I was just going to see if it changes. Well, that cheap hack did come back to bite me, because that length may not change if I were to change a camera, from perspective to orthographic. So I'm going to have to make something a little bit more robust to actually check for changes. I will probably, so this is not a scalable solution, but what I'll probably do is I will convert the pairs to a string, and then the new data to a string, and then do a comparison. The reason that's not scalable is because you could probably only do about 2,000 items. I would love for this thing to be able to show like 10,000 items, like maybe some sort of navigation where I'm going, seeing like this world or whatever, and all that. But obviously, this UI can't support that either. Like you couldn't have 10,000 items in this UI. So it doesn't matter, right? And this is all part of the UI, and that's the thing I'm always talking about. Like obviously, if you were to come here, if I did decide to stay with this UI, I would be like, there are too many items, and I would probably limit it to 100 items. And let's say there was 30,000 items, and make you have to filter, and then you don't get to actually interact with it until you filter down to the ones that you're using. Um, and then I would think if you want to interact with 10,000 items, you would do that like in Excel or something like that. I think that's in my mind where I'm headed with this, but that's way in the future, and I don't want to get overly committed to that. So here's an effect in the perspective data component, and basically I just said if there is something in there, which there should be now because of the way I made that change. So this was like first time it would come through, there wouldn't be anything in it. And if its type is perspective, then go ahead and update the camera item. So this I still need, this I don't need, but I'm just going to leave this because I think it's a good idea. Who knows what changes in the future. And then in the perspective form, I had to add a thing to say, hey, don't try to draw this stuff out because you're not going to be able to find this if there's not a camera item, if it doesn't exist. So that's that. Very excited. I felt like this is exactly what I wanted to do. I really wanted to learn more about signals, and that's awesome. Happy coding, everybody. Bye.